series oils. Everybody see those? And we're not surprised to see that when they did this, 0W20, 5W30, and 10W30 would be, quote, in the signature series oil. Probably the only one that surprised any of us was when we saw the 0W30 signature series oil move into the same pricing level as a 0W20 and these other signature series oils. So that would have caused some questions. Wait a minute, this is AMSOIL's signature series oil, #1 premium, best oil they have. So does that mean we brought up the quality of the other 3 oils to the same as this? You have to ask yourself a question. If we did that, wouldn't we have raised their price to the same as the old SSO rather than lowering the SSO price to their price? So just put 2 and 2 together. Of course not. The 0W30 is now in that family of oils with virtually the same characteristics, and it's a 25,000 mile rated oil rather than the 35,000 miles that it was before. Now, above and beyond that, we'd have to go do a very careful look at the physical properties of it and where it turned out compared to the old one. I'm not going to put that up there and do it, but I did do it. There's not a lot of difference. Very little difference. Okay? These oils all perform exceptionally well, all these signature series oils. Now, I find it interesting that AMSOIL did this, but at the same time, it makes sense because we talked about it before that AMSOIL wants us to understand and our customers to understand that there are 3 tiers of oil. Before, you all know this was not that easy.
Right.
Because people got confused why the oil that we call the XL, the extended life oil, was not the 25,000 mile oil, and this other oil that we had a longer life than the one that said it was extended life oil. So it got confusing. I think this move will simplify our life. The signature series oils are the original AMSOIL synthetics. They're the ones that people look for all the time in the past. They are what we would refer to as the chemical-based synthetics. They are very good oils, and they perform very well, and they're 25,000 mile rated. They cost what? Somebody know about what they cost? They got the price list around?
10, 15, yeah. Wholesale for the 20, the 0 weights, the 0W20s and the 0W30s.
And they're, how much she's looking it up? Yeah, they should be close to the front there.
Yeah. Your W30.
Well, that's the old.
That's March.
March, okay.
March.
Well, what was it? What was the 5W30 back then? Not the 030, the 530. It's right there.
I'm sorry.
735 wholesale.
Wholesale and retail, 955. So what'd you say? The new is $10.15, $10.50,
And $7.95.
Retail at $7.95. Now, what we've got is, if you look at the grouping, we've got an oil that can go 25,000 miles, and it costs about $10 retail. We have an oil that can go 10,000 miles, and it costs what, about $8? The XL? Tommy, you got a new one then? Or at least, a brand new one you can't have, it just came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, just tell me what that costs, because I don't know what it
Deal was 516, retail 17.
That's a new one from March?
It's 520.
No, I meant the date on the
Yeah. March.
This is March, okay. So we've got $10 and $7.50, and then we go to the OE oil, which is even less money than that. So what we're trying to build is a situation where a customer can fit into the zone that they are the most comfortable with. Because you've got some people, like most of us in this room, who go, hey, I'm going to run it for a year or 25,000. I'm not going to take it out before that unless I see some problem with it. Then you got a guy that's used it for a while says, well, I can trust that 10,000 miles and stuff. I can live with that, but that's as far as my psyche takes me. And then you've got the guy who goes, well, I don't know anything about this oil or anything. I want to use synthetic, but I'm just going to run it the regular drain interval, and I don't want to spend that kind of money, and that's an OE prospect. Okay. So if you look at it from AMSOIL's standpoint, they've given us the tools to deal with 3 different types of customers. The dyed-in-the-wool synthetic user that's going to run it for 1 year up to 25,000 miles. The guy that's willing to go some more distance, but he ain't going that far. It's just not his genetic makeup. and then the person who's new to it and doesn't have the confidence to go past the normal drains. Now those are individual customers, right? We're going to have that same spread when we start talking about fleet customers. Because there are fleet customers who would say they want to go to synthetic oil in their fleet because they want to have better reliability and less breakdowns. But they're not particularly, they know it's going to cost a little more and they're not particularly looking for extended drains. So that guy would be an OE candidate because they're going to run maybe 4,000 or 5,000 miles. That's all they're going to run. Got a fleet of cars, maybe it's a pest control company, maybe it's a small town with 6 police cars or something. So what we're working on here is you as the dealer, you have to ask some questions and get a feel for what your customer appears to be willing to bear. Give you an example. If I come into Tom and he's a fleet supervisor and he's got, I don't know, 100 vehicles under his charge. And I start talking with Tom and I say, yeah, Tom, we got these excellent oils, these signature search oils, man, they're good for a year, 25,000 miles, maybe 15,000 miles in severe duty. And I look to see Tom, his body English, starting to distance himself a little from me and look at me like, what are you, nuts? My job's on the line here. I ain't going for no 1 year or 15,000 miles. You have to learn to read your customer a little bit and shift gears. And I always think you can do that rather subtly without too much fanfare. Because you say, you know, in that oil we have a lot of experience with it, we're confident in it, but we do have accounts that just can't seem to go that far. So we also have this good XL oil that we can put in your fleet, and you could run that just the factory 7,500 miles and still have a margin to the 10,000 that we recommended. And now, the reason I like to go that direction, you started with the shocker, and you back off to something the guy might be more willing to deal with. If you started with the OE oil and said, this oil is good for 3,000 miles, well, you're going to dig hard to drag your way up to the 15 or 25,000 mile oil because you've already started with this quality. But if you start with the longer drain interval oil and the top of the line oil, you can always come down because that's lower mileage and less price. You know, and so you can come down talking to your customer. But, you know, if you're talking to an individual, what's actually the best thing for you to do?
Know your customer first before you walk in the door.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to that individual, but I mean, let's say that you're standing in a booth, you guys do it all the time, and somebody's going to walk up and talk to you about oil. What's the best thing to do with that?
Ask them how many miles you do a year.
Start asking the question. All you're doing is asking the question, letting the customer tell you what they're probably going to be interested in. Because if you tell a person who says, yeah, you know, I'm retired and I drive 5,000 miles a year, and you had already started talking about the 35,000 mile, you know, SSO that we had, that's probably not even a reasonable connection there. They can care less about this thing. But if you said, well, you're 5,000 miles, we have an excellent oil, our XL oil or our OE oil, they'll go 5,000 miles and you shouldn't have any trouble. Now, they'll, you know, AMSOIL says 6 months or 10,000 miles or 100 miles. And I'm not going to tell you that that's not important, but I have not seen that to be critical. I don't know about anybody else in here, if you can tell me if you have, but I've not seen the XL oil, if it's run for 9 months, 10 months, or a year, that the guy comes in there and says, well, you know, I had to really, that stuff was mud when it came out. And most guys say, well, I drained that out, but it looked about like it did when I put it in. Nothing wrong with it, you know. So I'm not going to tell you that that's not one of the specifics, that you have 6 months, or 10,000 miles, 6 months, or 6,000 miles, but I wouldn't get get bent out of shape over that if somebody ran it for 9 months or something like that, because I have not seen, in my personal experience, that to turn out. You know that most petroleum oils are 3,000 miles or 3 months? You know many people that change their petroleum oil at 3 months, but if they don't have 3,000 or 4,000 miles on it? Of course not. So there's some give and take in that number. So these oils, John put them up here, you can see them, the group of them, and you know, in this group of oils, I still will tell you, right now with the new cars coming out, one of the best products we got is that 0W20. I have not found anybody that has used the 0W20 in these late model Toyotas and Mazdas and now, what are they putting it in? They're putting them in Fords, Hyundais, yeah, say again?
Chryslers.
Yeah, and nobody has even the slightest complaint with that oil. That oil is a very good 20-weight oil. It's a much better oil, in my opinion, than XL5W20. Now, is XL5W20 good for 7,500 miles? Of course it is. It's a very good oil. But this stuff is really, in a good running car that puts 25,000 miles in a year, it won't make a dent in that 0W20. That is a very good oil. Well formulated. And it seems to be almost bulletproof. I did get a kick out of this. Does anybody notice something that would make sense to you? If that oil there, which was the Signature Series original, that its designator now is AZO. That used to be AMSOIL was AMZOIL, and they got sued by Pennzoil over that. And the old man, he's still very particular about that Z. So that was his oil originally, so they gave it to him, AZO. So I think that's just in his honor, the AZO oil. Now, here's a question you got to ask yourself. If I have 5W30 or choice of 0W30, and I live somewhere down here in the southern climates, what do you think is the big? There's a little difference in price, not much, but is there really any clamor to go to the 0W30 if you live in Orlando? And somebody would say, well, will it give you better fuel economy? Probably not that you can monitor. You go back and forth for different reasons you probably wouldn't pick up on. Now, talk to somebody who lives in Minnesota. I'd say that AZO, with its better pumping capability, because it is a zero weight, at the winter rating in 0W. So, when you're talking about those oils, 5W30, 10W30, or 0W30, in these southern climates are virtually interchangeable. There's hardly any application difference that you can see in them. So, if a person says, well, I can't handle going that thin, I'm going to stick with 10W30, my response is, how much do you want? Because they don't make much difference. The second number on those oils is the operational viscosity, and they're 30-weight oils. 0, 30, 10, 30, and 530. First number is the cold weather rating. You would have to be 10 below 0 to see the difference in any one of those oils with its startup capability. So, we're not going to see a lot of that south of the Mason-Dixon line. So for our purposes around here, we don't care much. So whatever the customer's, comfort zone is, they like 10W30, they like 5W30, or they want to do 0W30. It's fine. Used to, we had to make a difference because the 0W30 was quite a bit more expensive. So you had to at least tell a customer, if you're going to use the more expensive oil, to get your money's worth back out of it, you might want to go more miles in a year so that because it was a little more fuel efficient, that oil, but I don't think you're going to see much difference between these three oils, 10W, 5W, and 0W. But I will tell you this, of these oils, the 10W30 is actually the better oil to go a longer distance, because if I can find the data bulletin for it, I might here in just a minute. The NOAC volatility rating for the 10W30 is the best of the group, meaning that it has the least vaporization, and that means that it's going to thicken the least over a long drain interval. So that the 10W30 actually, if you got a guy that's going to run 20,000 miles in a year, the 10W30 is probably the one that will suffer the least amount of thickening due to vaporization over the course of the year. So just a little thing you pick up on. Now all these oils went to, let me see if I can find that data. They all went to a higher TBN than we had, like 12.5 or something.